Mama's in Control, episode 295, Living and Feeling in Alignment, an interview with the amazing Valerie. All right, ladies, so I have something special for you today. Actually, someone was interviewing me for my own podcast. Valerie Cap, who is one of the students of the MIIC Mastery program, said, Heather, I want to interview you. So I was like, great, why don't we do this? And then I can use it on the podcast as well. So Valerie is the founder of the Nourishing Collective. You could check her out at thenourishingcollective.com. She's a business coach practice. Oh my God, I never do this properly. She's the founder of the Nourishing Collective, a business coaching practice for entrepreneurs in the personal development industry. She helps coaches create alignment between their business and their life. She is also the founder of the Aligned Method, and we're going to talk about that. Actually, this interview was going into the book that she created, The Aligned Method. It's a 7-step process that she leads her clients through that help them to identify clear business goals and create strategic action steps while she supports them through the implementation process of creating the aligned, sustainable business they desire. Okay, so listen up. Alignment. What the heck does this mean? You hear it more and more and more, especially if you're in this personal development world. I've been hearing a lot of alignment and sustainability because guess what? Everybody has figured out that hustling and, waking up and grinding and never taking rest is killing all of us slowly. It is not sustainable. And as you know, that is part of my message as being a mother. You can be ambitious. You can be a go-getter. You can make millions and millions and millions of dollars. You can have a huge impact. And you could be a stay-at-home mom. You could be someone who just wants to garden all day, every day for the rest of your life. You can do whatever you want. And I will tell you, if you are living in alignment, you won't care what you're doing because it will feel amazing. So that is the whole purpose of this conversation today. So Valerie asked me, Heather, I want to interview you for this book, this workbook and workbook that she created. And I thought, you know what? Let's just air this conversation on the podcast. So listen, ladies, I'm recording this and we'll be launching this at the beginning of October. I'm going to be honest with you. For the last month and a half, maybe 2, we've opened the doors to the MIIC Mastery program. It has been a game changer to speak to so many women and invite them into this program. We have a few spots left, and once the spots are full, then I will stop talking about it. But my point is, and then we won't be opening it again until September of 2019. It's an 8-month. So MIIC Mastery, check it out, momisincontrol.com. It is an 8-month coaching experience. So this is a high-level, high-touch program where you are getting a lot of me. You are getting guest teachers, guest experts. The foundation is all about helping you feel in alignment in your life. Like, what is it that you want? How do you want to feel emotionally? How can you have these uncomfortable conversations in your life? How can you create more time and more energy and more ease? But this isn't just about learning. This is about applying. So if you've been sitting on the fence and you're like, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the energy, I can't. Oh, I'll do it later. These are all the limiting beliefs and stories that are holding you back. So if you feel a big calling to apply for this program, then I highly encourage you stop this podcast right now, pull over the side of the road, stop running, do whatever you're doing. And I want you to go to momisincontrol.com and fill out the application. Take your time and put some effort into it, because I personally read and respond to those applications. And then you'll get on the call. You'll get on a call for an intro session with myself or somebody on the team to make sure that it's a great fit. And then you'll talk to me. And then if it's good, we're good to go, and we'll tell you how to get started. But I want to make sure it's a good fit for what you're looking for. And if mastery isn't the fit for you, then fill out the application anyways, and we can have a discussion if there's another way that I can support you. You have one life, ladies, and you keep using the same damn story. Where's that getting you? So let's dive in. Let's figure out what alignment looks like. I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and you'll hear a little bit from Val as well. So let's get started.
Hi, Heather.
Hey.
Awesome. So this is like a complete switch, right?
No pressure, right?
No pressure. Yeah. So I'm really appreciative for you to take the time today to talk about alignment.
This is like my first moment back to, I feel like my first moment back to my desk, which is really interesting.
You took a couple of weeks off. Is that right?
I took 2 weeks off of coaching, but behind the scenes, of course, an entrepreneur's mind is never off. I'm like, oh, I can do this. But the beauty of that is you get space to allow the creativity to come through, right?
Yeah, totally.
When you love what you do, you don't really need a vacation from your job. But I had to force myself to, which I'm sure we'll get into the conversation of alignment. I literally had to force myself to create space, to just allow my body to recalibrate and to unplug, and just giving myself permission to sleep in and not be on routine and to do all those things. But routine does feel good.
Yeah, I totally understand the routine piece too. So how do you feel today versus, let's say, 2 weeks ago when you gave yourself the space?
Well, I feel really, really good. I feel this morning, so it's the first day of school for our kids and for a lot of people, but depending on where you live, sometimes they go back sooner or later, whatever season you're in. But I was reflecting on even how I felt waking up this morning. Like I woke up, I worked out, I did my thing. And I'm like, okay, I'm here and present for the kids. And I know it doesn't always turn out like that, but I just remember who that person was like 5-6 years ago and how far I've come. And so kind of like every season, right? The beginning or the ending of every season, you can reflect and go, I know how I felt in this season, right? Whether it was the holidays or the school year last year or 3 years ago. And it makes such a big difference to kind of be able to check on that milestone, because every day, I mean, we're so hard on ourselves. Like, I'm not getting anywhere. And it's like, no, all those little action steps that you do on a daily basis make that compound effect, which makes such a big difference in how you feel. Because I'm always about, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? It's not about working out to have a nice ass. Yes, that will be a side effect. But if I'm not focused on the nice ass and I'm focused on how do I want to feel? I want to feel strong in my body. I don't want to be reactive. I want to be able to be present. Wow, working out does that for me. So my why behind a lot of the action that I take is about how it makes me feel, not the material or physical thing that it's going to give me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably where I feel like a lot of people are missing the mark, whether it's in their personal life or business or whatever it is that they're doing. They're not really anchored into their why. And it's really about how you want to feel. I think that goes to also the theory behind Danielle Laporte's book, The Desire Map, right? Which is figuring out how you want to feel at a core level, your core desired feelings, and then creating your actions and things based on that. So
yes. And I told this story before, but I'll say it again, where, so almost 5 years ago, this December will be 5 years when I was diagnosed with cancer. And I was into personal development for a few years previous to that. So I feel like that was a introductory course to make me implement everything that I was learning. I talk a lot and I'm sure you and I will talk about inspired action.
Yes.
But that A word that I don't know why we forget to do that, like action, implementation. I remember when I was learning about the law of attraction, it was like they forgot the action part, right? It's like visualize and have positive thoughts and you'll just manifest. And like, well, how are you going to, manifest certain things if you're not doing the uncomfortable action to get there? So I was implementing a lot. I've actually, before I got sick, a lot of shifts and change happened in my life. But with Danielle Laporte's work, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? How do you want to feel? It's not, she would say things like, it's not the hardwood floors that you want. It's not the new kitchen. I just think about things in my life and I'm like, I want it. I'm like, but why, Heather? Why? Right. Mm-hmm. And I always come back to, I want to feel strong. I want to feel clean. I want to feel alive. The clean part comes from my sense of, I don't know, maybe it's the little sensitive soul empath in me, but, clutter really bothers me. So that minimalist in me wants to come out and be like, just start over, start fresh. Right. But really I had to start implementing and go, how do I want to feel in my life? How do I want to feel in my parenting? How do I want to feel in my business? That's a big one, because when you don't have the confidence in what you're doing and you're allowing fear to run the show, what's happening is you're looking at everybody else. Okay, I'm going to download this freebie, 10 easy steps to make $1 million. Okay, now I'm going to download this freebie, 3 things you're doing wrong, the reason why your kids won't sleep at night or whatever. And then you're buying into this bullshit, which is just like a freaking psychological way to create a catch headline to get people to open your email or listen to whatever. And what you're really doing is allowing people to suck into this trap of like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And so what I'm trying to do, which is really weird because I'm an online marketer and I'm a coach, but I'm like, guys, don't buy into the hype. Like, what do you want? What is your soul craving? And a lot of the feedback I get is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And I call bullshit on that, because you do know, because there's a reason why we're talking. There's a reason why you're listening to my podcast. There's a reason why you filled out the application. There's a reason why you buy those self-help books. Like, you do know. There's a part of you that does know. If you truly didn't know what you wanted, you wouldn't be seeking something different. So you have to ask yourself, if I did know, what would that be? Oh, well, oh shit, I don't want to open that can of worms, because wow, I don't really like a lot of what is going on around me. So I could literally talk for hours and hours on this.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think that's a great, I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about that specifically, and I hear that too. And I've probably said this to you numerous occasions. I don't know. And you're like, no, you do know. And so I think that's a perfect segue into the whole idea of inspired action, mm-hmm. right? I think when I think of inspired action, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this, but I want to share what mine are. So when I think of inspired action, that is like my soul calling me and prompting me to take a specific action, regardless if it makes sense or not, mm-hmm. right? And it's, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm like, I love this conversation. And I know a lot of people start to go, well, what does inspired action mean?
Right.
Like, do you have a specific example of in your life where you were like, I was inspired to do this? Like, why did you take the action?
I think because it felt, do you want the example and then why I took it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll use the example of you actually with me. As you know, just to share with your listeners, several months ago, I had been I had gone away for a mastermind meeting, and we were doing what we call these hot seats, right? And so we were brainstorming different scenarios and different problems within our business, within this group of masterminders. And as we were going through that, it was reflected back to me that, oh, Val, you're really good at this. And I was like, oh no, it's just, I was pushing it off. I was like, no, like I'm good at that, but like, it's because I know you guys. And, I was really not owning my own gift. And I was on the plane coming home, and I was journaling, and I was thinking, and I was like, you know what? I want to see if Heather will allow me to talk to the women in her community and help them, and just see if this is good for me, if I'm really good at what is being reflected back to me, you know? And so I remember getting off the plane, I got in my car, and as soon as I got in my car, I sent you a message and I said, can I do this? Right?
And I was like, yes, please.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the inspired action, I didn't overthink it. And I do remember at one moment, probably right before I did it, my head got in the way and I was like, oh no, like Heather's not going to allow me to do that. You know, who am I to come into your community and try to help, right? And try to support like your community. But it was really for me. It was really a learning lesson for me. But I had that moment where I was like, no. She's going to say no and this and that. And then I was like, you know what? Screw this. Like, I'm just doing it. And I mean, since then, I've just been leaning into that whole idea of inspired action. It's like that moment of excitement that I have for something and just following it. And when you follow it, the magic happens. Like more than you can even imagine opens up, doors open up, right? It's like the next little step. It's like breadcrumbs to whatever it is that you're supposed to create or do or have or, you know, quit, whatever it may be.
So I really thank you for saying that. And as you were saying that, and I get it, right? We all have those moments of, oh, I'm always talking about like when you're journaling, writing down, I want, I crave, I desire, or using the prompt, like, wouldn't it be nice if like I could partner with this person? Wouldn't it be nice if I could do this? But what stops us is we don't ask, right? You don't take that inspired action. So the worst thing that happens is you say something to someone else and they receive it and they're like, oh, no, that doesn't work right now. But you never know. You've planted a seed. You never know where that will go down the road, right?
That's right.
And being on the other side of that, the receiving end, going, yeah, go for it. Like, you know, it's offering more service, more support for people who need the clarity, who are trying to get the clarity and trying to figure things out. And I'm a huge fan of like, we all bring each other up or whatever. Oh my God, pull each other up as we rise, whatever that quote is. Like we all rise together, right? It's like we need to help each other. And I mean, I found that to be the most resistance in the group is asking for help and supporting each other and going like, hey, look at this worked for me. Like, here's a resource if you want to use it, because we've isolated ourselves as women, right? And we're afraid of each other and we're terrified of sisterhood. We're terrified of closeness with other women because of how we've been burnt in the past. And the truth is, this is the new mindset of taking the inspired action to support other people. And when you are a conscious, aware adults, you know, I've had people say to me, oh, I'm so sorry, I sent you a Voxer. If people don't know what Voxer is, it's just like a private message thingy on the weekend. And I said, listen, if I choose to respond on the weekend, that is my choice. Like, well, I didn't want to overstep boundaries. I'm like, that if it's my boundary not to respond on the weekend and I choose to respond on the weekend, you are not overstepping a boundary. I am breaking my own rule. So you could send me 50 and I can choose to reply on Monday. So, or I can reply immediately. Like it's a choice, right? But that's my own personal choice. So when people are like, oh, it's just, it sounds like, so inspired action is taking that action when you are excited and you're like, oh, I just really want to do that. On the opposite end of it, it seems like what gets in the way are judgments and fear. What are other people going to think if I do this? What are blah, 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 blah. But in my own personal life, listening to that feeling, that guidance is exactly what has led me to where I am now. Like, what do I feel inspired to do? Yeah. And then sometimes resistance will come in immediately and squash it, but you have to pay attention to what lit you up, what excited you.
All right. Because I think there's a reason for that. You know, I think a lot of times, and let me just speak from personal experience is, you know, I think of like a career path that I've been down and there's been a lot of pivots, right? There's been a lot of changes. And I remember being in my 20s and judging myself for that because we're so used to saying, okay, I'm doing this and I'm only doing this, right? So if you just put it in the context of your career, you know, let's say you go to school for accounting and then you start working in a CPA, accounting firm or something, and you're like, not this, right? This is not filling me up. I want to go do something that's completely different. People are afraid of that change because we made the commitment to the one thing instead of saying, you know what, this doesn't serve me anymore. I was excited about it at this moment. Now I'm excited about this, and let's follow that path, right? Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes the judgment, our own self-judgment and fear of, well, I made a commitment to this, so I'm going to do this. Right? Yeah. Keeps us stuck.
Yes. And that brings me to, I was reading the list of questions, like potential questions that you wanted to chat about today.
Yeah.
And the first one was, what prompted you to become a coach? And that was a perfect example of where I was in, how many years ago? 8-ish. I was a social worker. I literally went to school. Everyone who went to school wanted this specific job at this specific agency. So I was like, okay, I guess that's what I need to do. Mm-hmm. So I go to school. I focus on the goal. And this, I was not a goal-oriented person previously to university. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. I slid by and I was like, hey, what is the bare minimum that I can do in life to survive and just get out of high school? So when I went to university, I was a single parent. My son, I think he was about 1.5 years when I started. And so my drive was just never become a statistic, Heather. You need to prove the world wrong. So that was a great coping strategy at the time. And then eventually I had to let it go because I can't just do it from a place of anger and rebellious. I need to, feel alive with it. So I remember, oh my God, I totally just forgot. Okay. So I'm where was I going with this? So I go to school, become a social worker at this agency, land the job that everybody wanted. And I was like, not this. Oh my God, not this. And I'm like, Heather, you've tried everything you've been doing for the last 5 years of your life was for this moment. And you don't want it. You are an awful human being. Right. And I hear this a lot from women who are in corporate and they're or stay-at-home moms or whoever you are. And you're I should be grateful. I should be happy. I'm okay, Heather, you should be all these things. And my body, literally my body and my mind were going, not this. Run away, not this. So I stuck it out because my mom always taught me follow through with what you start. And instead of just quitting and I don't know, staying at home and crying myself to sleep, which I just went to work, came home and cried myself to sleep. I started to explore alternatives. And that was when, at the time, my son was about 4-ish and he started with anger and anxiety. And I was okay, here I am working with families and I don't know how to support you. And I'm coming home and I'm screaming because I'm stressed out because my body is saying not this. So therefore I feel depleted and I'm looking at you going, oh, you too, someone else who needs me to fix their problems, right? Because I'm not in alignment in my life. So I'm projecting onto my son. And then that's when I found meditation and mindfulness. And that's how I started the course, Teach Your Kid to Meditate, because I wanted him to meditate when really he was teaching me that I needed these skills too. And that it was a co-creation and it wasn't just about him learning a tool so that he could calm down so that I could cope with his discomfort. I wanted everybody else around me to be quiet and non-resistant and comfortable and don't have any confrontation with me because I'm going to explode, right? I'm that pop bottle that is about to explode because I am so out of alignment in my life. And the little voice inside of me saying, Heather, not this, not this. But my head is saying, well, I did what society told me to do. I went to university, even above and beyond when no one thought I would be able to go. I had to go as a mature student, I had to weasel my way in there. I had to bust my ass. I paid for my own education, have shit ton of debt because of it, or had a shit ton of debt because of it, and did it as a single parent, whatever. I'm why is this not good enough? And it's because I wasn't listening to myself and I was listening to what everybody else wanted me to be. So then that's when I got my first coach. And I shit you not, Val, I was on Facebook, and this is like back in the day. They still had Facebook ads, but it was like just starting. And there was this little ad, and it was called Abundant Yogi. Chris Ward was my first, and she doesn't really practice anymore. She was my first, I guess, life coach. And I didn't really know what life coaching was at the point, but it was about conscious business. And I was like, well, I'm not a yoga teacher. I didn't identify as a yoga teacher, but I identified as a meditation teacher because I was teaching mindfulness. So I click on it, I go through her funnel, and she's wearing ripped jeans and she's talking about business. And I was like, I want to be your friend. I want to be in your world because you are being yourself. You look comfortable in your life, and you are talking about what lights you up and all this. And I didn't know. I was like, what language is she speaking? I don't understand this. So I took a program from her. I joined this mastermind. And at the time it was $10,000, which, I mean, back in the day was a lot of money. Things are probably more than that now at that. Well, I know they're more than that at that level of what I did with her. And there was retreats, and there was coaching, and there was community. And the whole time I wanted to vomit and shit my pants. But that part of me that said, not this, like was out of alignment, kept going, yes, yes, yes. And I remember going back to work because I still stayed in my job to pay for this. My husband was supportive, but he thought I was crazy. But I just said, listen, if I don't do this, we're getting divorced. I will probably go cuckoo. You're going to have the kids full time because I will have to admit myself into the psych ward because this is how bad I felt. And he was like, do whatever you need to do, Heather. And I was like, I'll make it happen. I'll work extra. I will, we'll carry a little bit on a credit card. I will sell everything. We don't need to go on vacations like we want to. My mental health and physical well-being are more important than all of these extra things right now. And it's just temporary. And I try to tell people that. They're like, I could never spend that kind of money. And I'm like, great, but how much is it fucking costing you right now? To like, you want to have this successful business. You want to have this great relationship with your husband or your children or whatever. You want the money, but you refuse to invest anything in yourself. Tell me how you are going to fucking get there. You don't have a plan. You don't oh, you can't afford it. Great. That's fine. But what is your plan? What's your next step? Well, I don't know. You're using your excuses, your perpetual excuses. So I took huge risks and I didn't fucking care. I was just like, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to hate my life. And here I am doing everything that society wants me to do. And then so finally, when I started this coaching, I was like, yes, yes, yes. And then I went back to work. I'm like, I am so out of alignment with these people. Like, I do not feel, I'm looking at them going, why don't you guys want more? This was my thing. So now I say to myself, welcome to the crazy club. I say that to you guys all the time. Welcome to the crazy club, where you will feel so weird. You are the black sheep. You are the trailblazer. People might look at you at the beginning and go, you're crazy. You're weird. And then a few years down the road, if you create momentum and keep going, they're going to go, can you tell me how you did that? Can you tell me what's your secret? And you're like, I just follow my gut. Mm-hmm. So then I started creating this momentum. I'm like, oh my God, there's like this loss and grief because everybody, hey, you guys want to go out this weekend? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I don't want to get shit-faced wasted. And so we can come in the next day and talk about it. No, I don't want to gossip about everybody all the time. No, I don't want to just do all of these things. I'm like, are you guys okay with this? And nobody wanted more. Nobody wanted out. And I'm like, wow, you're just bought in. Your soul is leaving your body. Your eyes are slowly glazing over. And then the people I was attracted to were typically like the artist type, like the photographers or just somebody who had a hobby outside of work. And I noticed that the more they were there and the less they hung on to that, it was like they were just getting sucked into this like life of, I don't even want to call it stability because I think that is such bullshit when people are like, I can't leave my job because it's stable. And I'm like, it's stable, but you are a shell of a human being now. And you've completely lost the whole point of life, which is to smile and to feel joy. So then I decided when our third son was, when I was on mat leave for him, I made a goal to myself. I will not go back, will not go back. They all knew it. So at that point, like I was teaching meditation classes, like, full term, popped the baby out, and then started teaching class again a few weeks after. Here I am like teaching people how to meditate, and I'm like breastfeeding in the circle as well. I'm like, okay, close your eyes. And then you can just hear this baby like sucking on my nipple. But they didn't care because it was like, that was the feeling. I was welcome there. Right. And then, okay, guys, close your eyes. I'm like passing them around the class, and they're like, Heather, he shit his pants. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go change the diaper. Just lay in Shavasana. But that people were okay with that because that was the culture and energy that I was creating. And I would just teach people how to like become aware of their thoughts. It wasn't about getting rid of them, because that's like the biggest myth of all. It was like, what are you telling yourself? Like, sit with yourself, be with yourself. And so I just started doing that. I'm like, okay, do more of this so that you can cover some of the cost of whatever. And then I created a program, and it was slow. It was very slow, but a lot of what held me back was the fear of judgment. Of like, wow, if you do this, Heather, you're really going to be looked at as a crazy lady. And then I just kept going and going and going, and, many sleepless nights and many like, oh my gosh, moments. Like, I can't believe I created this. And you get over one hill, and then you look up and go, oh, frick, there's another mountain I need to climb. So I was just talking to my friend the other day. I said, I wouldn't change being self-employed. Like, I wouldn't take it back to be an employee of somebody else just because I have the freedom to be myself. And that to me is priceless, absolutely priceless.
So I have a question regarding that. So when you were talking about the freedom or the fear of judgment, but you just kept taking action, do you feel like, I'm trying to think of the right word, the words to come out of my mouth around this. So you kept taking action even in the fear, right? So you were do you feel like you became yourself through that process, or do you feel like you were just allowing more of yourself to come out? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, there's one where you're like, here's me and there's who I am. Or do you feel like it was a discovery of who you are through the process, which helped you overcome the fear?
I'm like, I don't think we ever overcome fear. So when people are like overcoming fear, I'm like, well, as soon as you overcome it, it's going to just wear a different mask and pop up a different way. So I don't know if I'm going to answer your question correctly, but a lot of times I took the fear I needed or took action out of fear because I was in survival mode. Meaning I didn't have an option. And I find the clients who do the best, like not everybody I work with works in business, like owns a business, because a lot of the women are just like, I don't know what I want yet, which is fine. But and even then I'm like, I don't want to be a business coach, right? But what is it? Well, a lot of women who are in business just represents freedom to be yourself. So I find the women who are backed in the corner, and it's like, if I don't pull this off, we cannot put food on the table. Those ones are more successful at creating momentum because they have no other choice. And that was for me. Like, I took risks. Like, Heather, if you fail at this, you're fucked. That's pretty much how I live my life. Like, okay, if I don't make this work, and yes, you fail along the way, but then I just get back up and go, well, that didn't work. Great. Pivot. Like, what else is going to work? Right. Yeah. What worked from that? What didn't work? So I hate the whole like fear of failure and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I've never been afraid of failure because I know it's part of the process. Like, I failed so many times in my life and I'm like, get back up. And I remember having this conversation with a friend. She's like, you're being a dead horse, Heather. Like, look what you've created. All you have to do is keep going. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then you learn and you're like, wow, that was hard. Okay, I'm not going to make it so hard. Now I'll make it easier. And you just keep going. You rinse and repeat. I don't think I'm answering your question.
No, you are. You are. I mean, I think it's what your opinion is on, do we overcome the fear? I mean,
don't let it trick you.
Yeah, that's what I think too. And I think you're flexing a muscle, right? When you identify what that fear is, like you said, it can wear many hats or it can trick you. I think the other piece of that too is reframing what fear or what failure looks like. Yeah. So if you can look at failure, and if you could see me, it's like air quotes, right? If your listeners can see me, if you identify with that as a failure and see it as a negative thing versus it's just pointing you in the right direction, it totally changes it. You're coming from a more powerful place, right?
Yes. And when you're talking about that, it brings up like my whole cancer journey. And I feel like this is an advantage that I have that a lot of people don't have, which is the fear of death. So ultimately, the fear of death I've read this and I'm sure everybody has their own fears, but when you're conscious of it, the fear of death is a big one for people, like one of the highest fears people will have. Not everyone's afraid of death. I'm not now. I used to be fear of death. Like now I get afraid of like something bad happening to my kids, but it's more from a place of gratitude, like understanding that this human experience is temporary and that every day is a blessing. And I get that fragility of like be grateful for this moment because it can end at any second. And it's just weird. Anyways, it's not weird. It's just I'm in a constant state of like presence and gratitude. Even if I'm not being present because my head is somewhere else, I am very aware that life is short. And people think it's long, and they're like, I can wait. I'll have another decade. And I'm like, even if you have another decade, 10 years is not that long of a time to create what you want to create. So people will wait and then go, shit, oh gosh, now that life, fear of death, now that I'm halfway my midlife crisis or whatever. Oh crap. Now I got to hurry because the fear of death is coming. So I had this fear of death smacked in my face when like, Heather, you might die, right? Even when I got diagnosed with cancer, I was like, oh, I'll just be stage 1. I'll be fine. No, you have a very rapid growing stage 4 cancer. And if you don't like nip this shit in the butt right now, you're fucked. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now I'll surrender. I really hear you.
Oh.
So when I didn't even want to do Western medicine, but that's another conversation. So I surrendered to that. I did it. I was like, let's allow the professionals who've dedicated their life to do this. I'll do Eastern, Western, whatever. I'll rub dog shit on myself if I have to. And I just remember this one night when I was crying on the bathroom floor, and I don't know if treatment started or not, but for some reason, the fear of death, like, Heather, you're going to die, just paralyzed me from head to toe. And everyone was sleeping. And if you've ever had those moments where you're like, I can't cry in front of my children because I don't want them to worry. I don't want to worry my husband. And I couldn't even like get in the shower to like let the water like just trickle so there would be a noise. So I'm laying on the bathroom floor in fetal position, like crying profusely, but trying to hold it in. And it was just like, you are going to die. Like, this is it. Like it was just all over my body. And, I had some moments after that where I knew I wasn't going to die, but it was just at a very fragile place in my health. And I thought, oh my God, like this, I was just paralyzed with my biggest fear. So after that, when I would be afraid to send an email, I'm like, okay, you've been in worse positions, Heather. Send the fucking email. Afraid to take a risk, afraid to invest in myself in a high ticket coach or whatever, go on this crazy retreat where I have to travel around the world or leave my kids or wake up. I hate flying. Like all of these things that made me uncomfortable. I'm like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm going to die. Well, I've kind of already been there. So I know what that feels like. So I'm okay with that. So let's just keep going.
Wow. Yeah, that's intense. And I think it was this, I've heard your story, obviously. And every time I hear it, I'm still like, oh, like I can feel it, such a visceral level. For someone who hasn't had that near-death experience, the perspective is, I mean, you have such a unique perspective, right? Because of what you've gone through. And that's what's it's a gift in certain ways, right? What would you say to somebody, and what do you say to your clients that feel like they're going to die, but it's not even close? Like, how do you help them see, like, this is not as scary as it needs to be?
Well, I say, are you dying? Like, first of all, we're all dying. If I get really woo-woo, we're all dying.
Right.
Like, you know,
Truly.
From yesterday, like I'm more closer to death. People forget that. And I'm like, I just ask, like, I'm a huge fan of Byron Katie, but it's like, is it true? I just say it all the time. Is it true? Like, are you dying? Is it true that you're going to fail? Is it true that if you do this, everything is going to go to shit? Is it true that your child is going to grow up to be a drug addict because you said no? Is it true that holding this boundary, like there's so many stories we have in our mind, and you have to ask yourself, is it true? Is it true? And if the answer is no, then you know you're coming from a place of fear. If the answer is yes, then you have to question it again and go, are you 100% sure that you have no, like, example, my husband is an asshole because he didn't communicate XYZ to me. That's not how I feel, but I'm just using it as an excuse, right? Or as an example. If you're like, Heather, is that true? I'd be like, yes, he's such an asshole. He does this all the time, blah, blah. If we calm down the ego and you're like, is it true? And I'm like, no, it's not true. Maybe he's stressed out. Maybe he doesn't know how to communicate. Maybe communication is easy for me, but it's not easy for him. And then you have to get like really quiet with yourself. But people avoid getting quiet because it's uncomfortable. So yeah, people are like, what's the secret sauce? I'm like, you need to do really uncomfortable shit and stop running away from it. And one of those uncomfortable things might be holding space for your child when they're having a tantrum and calling you a fucking bitch and not reacting, and learning how to hold that space. And then when your child is calm, saying, let's talk about what just happened there. That's really, really uncomfortable.
I can concur because I've been there. Not with those exact words, but I totally feel that. And I think it's, it's not their emotions are not a reflection necessarily of us, right? Sometimes, but not all the time. But it's really uncomfortable for us. Ugh. Yes.
But also realizing, and I think I've been going through my book proposal process and kind of figure out what is different between the book I'm writing and other ones that I'm seeing on the market. And in the parenting world, there's a lot of like judgment and shame and blame. Like, you either have these extremes of work on yourself, all the child's behavior is a reflection of you. And I don't disagree with that. And I don't fully wholeheartedly agree with that, because we can do all the inner work that we want and be present and be on our game, but realizing that we are still human. So we can lose our shit, but we should be able to say, I'm sorry. And for a lot of people, their parents never did that. Like, we are changing the evolution of the parenting conversation. But on the other side, we have to realize that just like we have our tantrums, our children have our tantrums too. And it doesn't matter how much personal development work you're going to do, your child will still get angry. Your child will still be sad. Your child will still get super excited. Your child will still throw toys across the room. Your child will still get in trouble at school. Whatever that is, realizing they have their own spiritual script, and and human experience. And we can't blame ourselves and go, what the fuck? I've been meditating every day. Why haven't you changed? They're not supposed to.
Right.
Like we need to see and accept them for who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to share this really quick story. You might appreciate this. So do you know that book, How to Talk to Your Children So They'll Listen? Something like that.
Yeah.
So that book was mentioned in this this kid's book that my son was reading just recently. And I was like, funny enough, I think that book is sitting on our bookshelf, right? Picked it up. I don't even sure if I read it fully. And he's like, really? And I said, yeah. I said, I have that book. I said, like, I'm learning how to be a parent too, right? I've never been a parent before. Like, I'm learning just as much as you are. And so yesterday I was in the kitchen doing something and he didn't like the way that I said something to him. And he said, Mom, clearly you did not read that book because you don't know how to talk to me. So I'm going to listen to you. And I was like, oh my God, like, isn't that funny? It's like, you're too smart, kid. Yeah. And then of course it made me stop and say, how am I actually responding? Right? Like, what is he picking up from me right now? So,
and then at the same time, we get fixated on being perfect.
Oh,
and that pisses me off too, because it's like, oh, well, I should have said it this way. Therefore he would have listened, but realizing it's a two-way street that yes, at his age, he might not reply. He might not be conscious enough to say, well, it's my responsibility of how I take people's words or whatever. He'll get into that when he's older. But yeah, we get so like perfection-y about like, what is that strategy that I learned? Oh, what am I? It's just consciously taking everything and saying, yep, that worked. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, I'll try again, and trying our best to let go of the contrast, right? The contrast being what we don't want in our lives. And that kind of goes full circle to contrast, like letting go of the contrast, meaning letting go of the jobs that are no longer serving us, letting go of the words that we're using that are no longer serving us in our communication, letting go of how we treat ourselves, letting go of our old crappy habits that are not in alignment. But I'm so grateful for contrast. I'm grateful for those hard conversations with my kids. I'm grateful for, when my body tells me, binging on chips and pizza today, that's going to suck for a few days. So I'm going to give you contrast so you get your ass back on the wagon. And it's like, okay, thank you.
Yeah. And do what you need to do to feel good, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the point, like you just said earlier.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you we talked a lot about, following like those prompts and following the intuition and your journey. What do you think alignment really means? Like alignment in your life, alignment in your business. Like if you could define it, not in one sentence, but if you could define it, what would that look like? Or what does it mean to you?
Well, I was going to say it just feels good, but we do have to take resistance into consideration, because I'll give you an example. Writing this amazing book, I'm trying to talk nicely about it now. I resisted it for many years, and then I got angry, and I went through like this whole grief process of like, let it go, whatever. And when I asked myself, is writing this book in alignment with how I want to feel, like with my journey, and I sit with it and I get an answer of yes, then I know I need to move forward with it. Now, when I move forward and all that pops up is resistance, 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 I have to push through the resistance. I have to co-create with the resistance. I cannot back down from it because it's hard. So alignment is when your first gut reaction is, this feels good. This is right. Not saying that the action that you're going to be taking, even if it's inspired action, is going to feel easy or good all the time. But when you ask yourself, do I want to stop this? Is this life enhancing? Is it moving me forward or further away? Am I doing this because everybody else is doing it, or am I doing it because I want to do it? So I had a colleague post on Facebook one time. She's like, I'm not writing this book anymore because I think I just want to write it because everyone else is writing books and blah, blah, blah. And I had to sit with that and go, okay, am I doing this because that's what they do in my industry? They write books. And I sat with it for 2 days of like, I'm not writing this book anymore. And then I sat with it for 2 days of I am writing this book. And the I am writing this book felt really, really good. So I seen the contrast of like, oh, like she triggered something in me, and it gave me the opportunity to deepen my alignment even more and ask myself, why does that trigger me? Because I was uncertain at that point. I'm still like, am I doing this because I don't want to, or am I doing this because everyone else is telling me to? Like, what's going on? So I had to re-ask myself that question. I had to sit with it. It took me 4 days to come up with an answer. And the answer was yes, keep going. And then I was more committed to it. So commitment and devotion to alignment, like, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but there's just at some point in your journey, like there's curiosity and then there's taking a leap and jumping in, and then there's commitment and devotion. I cannot go back to who I was. Like, I will not do that. And if that makes other people uncomfortable, or, you know, they're asking me to do something, I'm like, no, like, that's just not my thing. Like, have fun. And they're judging me for that. I'm like, you're just not my people. Like, that's okay. Go find your people. I'm not judging you for, you know, your lifestyle choices. That just is not in alignment with me anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love what you had said, which is curiosity plus taking action plus commitment and devotion to it. I love that. I haven't really thought of alignment in that way before, which is because it is hard when you, it's like the initial step feels easy, right? And you're like, yes, I'm so excited. I want to do this. And then it is all of the things that you just said. It's the fear. It's being triggered by something. It's working through. It's deepening your meaning, your why, whatever. And that's where you really have to push through and through that resistance and fear. Mm-hmm. And that's through commitment and devotion. I love that.
And you will be brought to your knees with that. And it's like, are you committed to becoming the best version of yourself? And it doesn't mean you have to be perfect every day. Like, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm going to work out 7 days a week. Oh yeah. In reality, it was like 3 or 4, but that's 3 or 4 more times than somebody else. Like, it's effort, right? It's like, I'll try to give 60 or 70% every day rather than trying to give 110% every day and then burning myself out. So right. I'm committed and devoted to this. Is it going to be perfect? Not even close, but I'm not giving up.
I love that. So part of why we're doing this interview is because I'm writing a book, right? Not the same style of book that you are by any stretch, but it's really around alignment in your business and your life, specifically for coaches. And through this process, I'm almost finding myself to be removed from each step. Like, I'm not, because I don't want to be in that place of perfectionism and I don't want to overthink it. And then the fear that sets in is like, is this going to be good enough? Mm-hmm. Right? Is it going to be entertaining enough? Is it going to inspire people? Are the people who are, you know, collaborating on this going to be disappointed because it's not of this certain value, whatever? And every now and then one of those little things will pop in my head and I'm like, no, just keep moving forward. It will work. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the best piece of work I've ever put out. Right? So when you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, I can identify exactly with what you're saying right now because of the process that I'm in. Right? So we don't get in that fear of not taking action. Plus the accountability piece.
Yes. And you know, okay. So writing a book has been like, I think it's harder than parenting, to be honest with you. And I asked myself why, because it's highly creative. And that is something I've avoided my whole life, pretty much. Like, I was always a creative person, but I was never given the space to be that, to figure out who I was, right? So as a small child, you will watch children and they're constantly, like my youngest
I don't know who he's going to become, but he's always drawing or just creating things in his brain all the time. And I'm like, okay, like we come into the world like this. It looks different for everybody. And then I lost it very early. And then getting back to it, it's because it's like someone giving you a canvas and all this paint and a brush and saying, draw me something. And I just want to say, can you show me a template? Like, is it going to be a tree? Is it a piece of fruit? Is it a person? Like, what's it going to look like? They're like, nope, I'm not telling you that. You have to just draw. And then you start and you're like, oh, that's ugly. I want to keep going. And if you have ever listened to any artist, they will look at their old paintings, like from a month ago, a year ago, the first one that they made that maybe sold for $1 million. And they're like, why would someone buy that? Like, I've gotten so much better. But it's art, it's creativity. And I say this to people all the time about creating your life. Like, your life is your art. And the reason why you resist it so much is because that's the creative process. So it's messy. People say, I want a blueprint. I want a blueprint. I'm like, I can give you a freaking blueprint. It's a freebie. There's a freebie on my website, blueprint. And it will not work for you. 10% of it will be a guideline. But if you're like, oh, how did she do it? I can give you feedback. I can give you strategies, tips, but you are not me. And you have to use that and tap into your alignment, your intuition, and co-create your life with what works. So that's really hard for people to comprehend when they're like, well, I have this comparison game going on in my head. And I'm like, then get the fuck off Facebook and stop subscribing to everybody's newsletters and sit with yourself in silence and say, what works for me? What do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And until you get another answer besides, I don't know, keep asking yourself, what do I want?
Yeah. I love what you just said, specifically around that point of comparison, because I just did a Facebook Live on this the other day called Stay in Your Own Lane. I was driving down the road and I was on the highway, and normally I'm a speeder. I just am. I have a heavy foot. And for whatever reason, I was actually following the speed limit, but I also knew that there was like a construction zone coming up, and here you lose your
for whatever reason, I was following the speed limit.
What? I know. God forbid, right? I want to not cause an accident coming up, or anyway. So I'm driving down the road and I knew it's coming up. So I was like, oh, whatever. I'll just, I'm just going to stay in the speed limit. And I'm watching these cars fly past me, right? And I could feel myself accelerating. Like, I had to keep up. And I was like, why am I doing this? And then it prompted me, and I was thinking about, that idea of following what everyone else is doing and comparison. And I was like, no, we have to stay in our own lane. Sometimes you have to shut out everything else so you can create this life that you want, or you can create this project or this business or whatever it is, and just shut it all out. And when you do that, like you just said, you can really start to tune in to what it is that you want. But we're so, we're brought up in our education system and, our society where this is what you do. You just follow the way and you don't even second guess it, right? You don't even second guess. And then you wake up, after you've done mindfulness stuff and you're like, not this.
And then you realize that way of being isn't sustainable culturally.
Oh.
And then people are like, we need to change. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to start to change. And then people are like, no, it needs to start from the top down. The media needs to da-da-da. And I'm like, it all starts at home. It literally starts with yourself. I can't change how the media perceives motherhood and women. But what I can do is change myself and then speak this and then inspire other people to change. And then eventually with a cultural shift, they will stop pretending that, mommy juice is drinking a bottle of wine a night and that you need to be exhausted and chronically overwhelmed to be a quote unquote good mother. And God forbid you feel good in your body and your mind and in your life. So, I mean, that I'm like, don't get me started on that topic, but it's like more aligned you are with yourself, whatever that looks like. And if people are like starting to give you the crazy eye because they're like, what are you doing? You're like, good. This works. This works. This feels great. And I find I see the resistance all the time when I try to find mentors that are big into alignment, like what works for you, Heather? Because sometimes there's people like, well, you should do this to monetize and you should do this. And like, that's not going to work for me. Well, why? One, because I've tried it before and I've invested a lot of money and it doesn't feel good. Well, if you do this, and it's like, why are you pushing your agenda on me so much when I just don't want to do that? If you look out in the world, there are no, like, I mean, there's business models alike, but why is there so many different businesses? Why is there so many, like, you find what works for you and work it. Like, just do your own thing and stop trying to push a freaking boulder uphill when you're like, I don't even want to be pushing this boulder. Stop, let it go and reinvent. I mean, I just find for a lot of people, the hardest thing is letting go because they're absolutely terrified because that's a complete surrender. So,
well, anybody who's listening to this podcast is already probably questioning what's happening in their life, right? There's a nugget. That's why they're here.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a different way and that's what you teach and embody. There's a different way. It's whatever your way is.
Your way is the right way. And people around you won't necessarily agree. But if your soul says, thank you, I've been waiting for you to listen to me, then you know you're on the right path.
Yeah. I love that. That's a perfect example of alignment, I think. Awesome.
Thank you, Miss Val.
Thanks, Heather. This was fun. I love hearing you just go all out and just speak. And it's such a joy. Thank you.
Thank you. So where can people get more of you? What are you up to these days?
Yeah. So right now I am working specifically with coaches, helping them start and grow their coaching practices. And all information can be found over at thenurturingcollective.com. So that's where people can find me. Yeah.
And you're on Facebook too?
I am on Facebook. Same, The Nurturing Collective is where you can connect with that work. Same for Instagram. But I mean, doing what works for me and what's in alignment for me right now is predominantly through Facebook.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, girl.
All right, there you have it. That was me and Valerie talking about alignment and life and a little bit behind the scenes of the shit I had to do to get to where I am today. So I would love for you to take a screenshot of this podcast as you're listening to it and tag me on Instagram. I always love to share the love and say thank you for listening and sharing it with your friends and things like that. And this is your last call. I'm not really going to bug you that much anymore on the podcast about mastery. So if you are so done trying to figure it all out by yourself, because I will tell you right now, I've given that up a long time ago. If I'm struggling with something, I ask for help. So if you're ready to ask and you're ready to stop because you feel like you're running out of time and your kids are getting older and you're yelling and you're stressed and you think and you still believe that you need to work really, 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 really hard to get something done, I'm telling you, there's so much freedom on the other side. So if you're ready to surrender and to create more freedom in your life, emotional freedom, financial, time, energy, I want you to head on over to mamasincontrol.com, fill out the application, and I look forward to reading it and connecting with you on the other side. You are just one step away from changing your life. Talk soon.